we will be able to respond to those as we go. I'm still seeing the attendees go up a little bit, so I'll just give it a couple more minutes, or one more minute. Oh, I'm sorry, not the chat. You're going to use the Q&A function. Okay, we'll get started. So, welcome to the IQP application process kickoff for this year. We're excited to have you, and we're excited to kind of give you a summary of what the application process looks like and what you should be thinking about next. So if you made it here, step one is complete. The first thing to remind you of is that we are excited to bring back our in-person global fair this year, which is going to be held on Wednesday, September 15th. From 2 to 4 p.m. in the campus quad, you can stop by anytime during that time, and we're going to have tables representing all of the IQP destinations that are available to you on the off-campus program. So this is a real casual event, a time to get a little bit more information about the process, talk to our team if you have questions about how to apply or about specific details about your application, and most importantly, to meet directors from all of the IQP Project Center sites. So the directors will be really excited to tell you more about their center, the types of projects that are available there, and to answer questions. So please stop by. Like I said, that's between 2 to 4 p.m. and that can be any time that you want. So some other ways that we are getting the word out, if you have seen them already or if you want to go back and get more information. First is our newsletter. So we send out a weekly newsletter on Fridays with information about what you should be working on at that point, or what you might need to know about the application process for IQP and also for other off-campus programs. So you will see that every week, and that's a great place to stop if you are just looking for what to do next. I'll also show you where to get those if you haven't seen them yet. Another place to go is our off-campus IQP page. So we have some short videos on there that will walk you through each stage of the application process. And I'll give you that link in a second, as well as e-projects. So if you haven't been to e-projects yet, I highly recommend that you bookmark it. This is your place to look for information about the IQP application project centers, and for more details about the project center specifics. So here are the places to bookmark. For the Global Fair, go to Plus Global Fair 2021. That'll give you information about associated events. For the off-campus IQP videos and more details about dates and deadlines, go to Plus Off-Campus IQP. And then for e-projects, you can visit eprojects.wpi.edu. So let's talk about the steps to apply. We have broken this down into 3 steps: explore, prepare, and apply. First, explore. So this is right now and potentially even over this summer. We want you to be thinking about what's right for you for the application for the IQP. So you can think about, would you like to do an off-campus program versus an on-campus program? Those are formatted differently with a 1-term option for off-campus and typically a 3-term project for an on-campus experience. So you want to think about what format works into your schedule. You can browse e-projects and watch the site-specific videos for more specific details about the programs. Think about terms that work for you, project opportunities that you're interested in, budgets that make sense for you and your family, and how that will impact your consideration of where to go. And then, like I said, come to the Global Fair. We'd love to meet you. We're going to be outside on the quad with lawn games and music and just, you know, a celebration of this experience. and we'd love to see you there, as well as some of the other associated events like today, and some drop-in hours that we'll have in our office to talk more about how to apply. So to go into more detail about this stage, you can watch the IQP Explained video on that link I already gave you at Plus Off-Campus IQP. This is what that looks like, and you'll see at the bottom, you'll see the steps to apply, and then you'll see the video series here. Also on e-projects, just as a reminder, when you go in, you can filter by term, you can filter by type of project, you can filter by year, and then click on any of those tiles to see more information about that specific project center. Next step is prepare. So as you get ready, you may have already started this. You want to look at the application preview, maybe even open up the application in e-projects to see what's going to be required. We'll need a resume, 2 essays that are 250 to 500 words, references who are one being a WPI faculty member and one of your choice. And you can start to gather that information. We recommend write your essays offline. You know, really this last step of finishing the application shouldn't take you too long, especially if you've taken time to write your essay offline, prepare your resume, save it as a PDF, and then upload it. So that's stage 1 of the application. The second part of it is narrowing down your preferences. And this is where the global fair can help. This is where our drop-in hours can help, narrowing down which sites you're interested in, which terms make sense for you, and how many options you're able to give us as part of your application. So there's a lot more to know about that preference process, and you can find more about that in the How to Begin video, which is at the same link, Plus Off-Campus IQP. You have more than 60 options this year in terms of site and term options. So you can choose from a lot of different options, and we ask you for at least 6, but there can be more in order to place as many students on the program as possible. I'm going to pause for a second because I see a couple items in the chat, and I'll just go back. So one person asked if the WPI reference needs to be a WPI professor, or can it be an advisor or someone else? So the first reference needs to be a WPI professor. I know that for some of you, especially last year being the way it was formatted, may not feel like you have great connections yet to WPI professors. Think about somebody who maybe you were in a smaller class with, maybe you took GPS or attended office hours more frequently. That might be somebody that you could put for that professor. And then an advisor or somebody else, a WPI, a coach, or someone like that can be your second reference. And yes, Dylan, I think, you know, thinking about who you made a connection with, even if it was a smaller connection, we just like to have at least one WPI reference. And stop by the drop-in hours if you need more advice on that. So then you apply. So beginning in e-projects, there on every page, you'll find an apply now button that will open up this year's application, or you can also visit the forms library where you'll find a link to the application as well. We need you to complete the application form and the preference form by October 4th at 9 a.m. So keep that in mind, October 4th at 9 a.m. The preference form is not yet open. That will open on September 10th. Right now, all you need to think about is your application and just start thinking about your preferences, but that will open very soon. And for last steps on how to apply, including those details about the preference form, watch the How to Apply video at the same place. So resources you can use along the way. Of course, our open advising sessions start next Tuesday from 3 to 5 p.m. Those will be held up on the second floor of the project center. And we would love to have you stop by. If that time doesn't work for you, feel free to reach out to us via email at global@wpi.edu. We're happy to do advising sessions over Zoom as well. Sometimes it's just easier to have a quick Zoom conversation with one of our advisors, and we can answer your question quickly or even screen share and show you what we're talking about. So whatever you prefer, whatever you prefer, we're happy to be available to you. You also may want to stop in with the Academic Advising Center. We really recommend this as you're planning out your next year's schedule and where IQP would fit in best for you. Some majors have more difficulty with this than others, so stop by Academic Advising. They know what you're facing when you're thinking, especially about the one-term IQP and ID 2050 and all of the pieces academically that fit into the application, into applying and then going on your IQP. So you can find more information in our video content or talk directly to an advisor who can help map it out with you. And finally, the Writing Center. So one of our drop-in hours will be focused on the Writing Center, and we'll bring in some of the advisors from there to talk specifically about writing your essays. They always are a resource at any time during that process, though, and they're located in Salisbury, but very clearly right on the front of their website, they have a place to make appointments. Book early. I know they book up, so make sure that you are checking in with them. And then the final resource I'll give that didn't make it to this slide, but is our neighbor right downstairs in the project center is the CDC, who can help you with resume writing. And this is a great time to stop and think about your resume, think about what you've done so far, and how you can specifically tailor your resume to your teamwork experience as you write your application. So the whole campus is available to you as a resource, and we really encourage you to use those offices how you can. So just some final things before we dive into questions. First of all, remember that on-campus IQP is an option to you as well. We will hold an on-campus IQP fair in the spring. It's typically around St. Patrick's Day, like mid-March. And there's nothing you need to do about on-campus IQP right now. So we hold the large off-campus IQP process in the fall. And then students who are looking for on-campus IQP still have time to figure out their on-campus IQP in the spring. Basically, by the end of this academic year, if you are a sophomore, you should be thinking about what is your plan for IQP next year. So you have some time to think about that. Although remember that the off-campus application is due by October 4th. Also resumption of travel. So we, obviously need to recognize that in 21-22, we were not able to have IQPs travel. We had many of the groups that stayed in remote contact with their sponsors, whether they were, close by or around the world. And a lot of those were still able to maintain that same contact with their sponsors in country. And we are making progress every day to resume travel where it's safe to do so on our program. So we had our students in Bar Harbor this summer. We have plans for travel this A-term, which I'm very excited for. And as the year goes on, we are committed to making sure that we can get to as many places that are safe to go to and where we are able to travel to. So there's a lot that goes into resuming travel, including entry requirements in the countries, including COVID case rates and, the overall health and safety risks in the country, either for our group or for the citizens of that country right now. So all of those factors have to be taken into account. And I think the thing for you to keep in mind is that no travel is guaranteed, especially, as we think about, where things will be at this time next year. I hope that we'll be traveling to every possible place that we can, and we're making every effort to. But there's a lot of factors that you need to consider as you're applying to, and some of those may rely on what terms are best for you, what area of the world you're interested in, what projects you're excited about. And our commitment is to make sure that you get your IQP done. So, all of those factors need to come into play as we're considering where you're interested in going for IQP and when you're interested in doing that. So that's all I have to say, and I'll leave it up to some questions. I have Deb to help read some questions from the chat.
Hi, Erin. We have a few questions out here. The first one is, when filling out the IQP applications, are submissions first come, first served?
Great question. So applications are not first come, first serve. What happens is everyone applies by the deadline, October 4th. There is no wiggle room on that deadline. We need you to submit your application and your preference form by October 4th. And then we begin the review process from there. So part of your application will be your A-term grades. So we pull your transcripts after A-term, and then every application is reviewed by a project center director, not necessarily for the projects that you have included in your preferences, but one of our project center directors, we divide out those applications amongst the whole group. So there's not a preference given to when those applications are submitted. Everything is reviewed at the same time.
Thanks. The second question is, does it matter which form you complete first, the application or the preference form?
No, it doesn't. Both I would encourage to take careful consideration about your options and careful consideration about your answers to the application. Remember that you still have a lot of time. It's only September 2nd. You have a whole month. So you don't want to leave it till the last minute, but you certainly don't want to submit something quickly and then realize that maybe you could have put some more time into the essay or included something else on your resume. So certainly take care on the application. And then when it comes to the preference form, same thing. We will only place students in locations that they have given us as places that they're interested or very interested in going to. So I, take a screenshot, print out the email confirmation you receive. I really encourage you to double check what locations and terms you've given us, because any of those that you've indicated you're available for could be an option. So as long as you take care with it, you can submit the preference form first or the application. It's really up to you.
And I think we may have covered this, but it probably bears repeating. Is there a way to see a copy of what the whole application looks like besides opening it on eProjects?
That's a great question. So if you go to Plus Off-Campus IQP, you can see a PDF version of the application preview. So you can see the essay questions and the other stuff that you'll be asked. Basically, like I said, it's a pretty simple form to fill out. There's a section about language ability, then the essays. There is a very important question about your academic history. So if there's anything that you expect might show up on your transcript that a reviewer might have a question about. For example, if there was a term that you didn't pass any classes, or if there's a term where maybe you didn't do as well as you hoped to do, we really encourage you to use the academic history question to kind of expand upon what happened. And that's okay. That gives us context that maybe we can't receive from your resume or from your transcript alone. So it's okay to say, I ended up taking a leave of absence for the rest of the semester, or I switched majors after realizing that maybe these courses weren't what I was interested in. So use that section. But certainly if you want to look at the questions first, you can see the application preview.
Thank you. Our next question is, are professor assignments random, or is there a way to send our preferences?
Our professor assignments.
I believe that means
for advisors.
Advisors, yes.
Yes. So the puzzle of the off-campus IQP experience is quite large. So we have about 90% of the class or more that is interested in the off-campus program. So we're placing all of the students on the program. And at the same time, we're placing the faculty advisors on the program. So the faculty advisors are not always assigned to your program until around the time that you receive your placement. So at the Global Fair, you will meet the faculty directors, the faculty members who set up the sponsor relationships and have a close relationship with our office on setting up logistics and housing and other details about the program. But those faculty directors are not always the same people who travel with the group. So faculty advisors can come from any department across WPI. It really is necessary that they come from all over campus because of how large the program is. So, the faculty director that you meet at the fair may not be the same person that travels with you.
Thank you. And how do we turn in our application for final submission?
So that would just be by submitting it in eProjects. So in eProjects, you can browse all of the project opportunities on those pages. There's an Apply Now button that will open the application, or you can go to the forms library and find a link to the application there as well. Either way, as long as you submit that application, it will come to us for final review. And then you have to submit the preference form as well. So on that deadline, October 4th, we'll be making sure that we have an application and a preference form from every applicant.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can we apply for more than one term and say, for example, I want these 3 options for C term, and if I can't get those, if I can't.
Oh, I see the question, Deb. You cut out a little bit for me. So someone's asking about applying for term.
Some project centers as more interested than other project centers.
Okay, I don't know if you cut out for me or for everyone, Deb. So I'll respond to the question that I can see here, which you are able to give us your preference through the preference form. So you will be asked to give a rating to all 60 plus term and project center opportunities. For each of those, you'll be asked to say if you're very interested, or not interested. So for this example, if you wanted C term and you were very interested in C term first, you could indicate which programs in C term you were interested in. if D term would be your second choice, you could indicate which programs you're very interested in for C term, and then you could include the programs that you're interested in for D term. So you're basically giving us your top choices, of which you need at least 3, and then then you need at least 6 total in the very interested and interested categories. So you could give us 3 very interested, 3 interested. You could give us 6 very interested. You could give us 8 very interested and 2 interested. But you need to just make sure that all of the programs you give us are places that you would be happy traveling to if you were placed there.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there site-specific questions in the application?
So no, there are no site-specific questions. The one thing that is slightly related to sites would be questions about language. So the first question on the application is your language ability, anything from beginner to fluent. And you can include any language learning time, any fluency. You can include that on that piece. Also under the language question, there's a section about your interest in the area or other more academic focused learning that you've done about a specific area. So you can include more detail there about what courses you've taken or, your interest in a specific place. That said, your preference form is what's going to drive your placement. So if you tell us on your preference form that you're very interested in 3 Spanish-speaking countries and 1 German-speaking country, and then you tell us, that you're interested in, I don't know, some other Spanish-speaking countries, we can't read your mind through the preference form. So you could be placed on a German-speaking place because you have given that as an option to us. We need to go by the options you've given us. And there's really not a way to put any more preference on a specific place other than, the quality and content of your application and the language ability that you indicate on your application.
Erin, are students on academic warning eligible to apply?
Thanks for asking. So students on academic warning are eligible to apply. Again, knowing that last year was a very unique year, I know there may be some of you who are thinking about, how does that status affect your application? So you are eligible to apply. I would highly encourage you to use the academic background section that I talked about, where you can kind of explain what happened or why did you end up on academic warning? What are you doing to try and bring that status back up? Students on academic probation are not eligible to apply right now. So we want you to focus on bringing that status back up. And then we're happy to talk to you after your academic status comes back to at least warning or not back to good academic status. But we can't have you apply while you're still on probation. Keep in mind that we do this very large application process in the fall, but we are running supplemental application processes throughout the year. So if you're not eligible right now, there will be time to reapply or to apply for the first time if you are not eligible right now. Or if you feel like it would be better to focus on academics and maybe think about IQP later. Right now in the fall, this is the best time that all of the options are open for 2022, 2023. So you have, the entire catalog of programs available to you right now. The supplemental processes are smaller and the space is limited, but we still have space. And, it really comes back to that same question of the goal, and, what is the goal? And ultimately the goal is to make sure you have an IQP. So we are always available throughout the year to help with that placement process.
Thank you. If I choose a domestic site as sort of a safety site, will I be put into the domestic site over the international sites that I choose?
Okay, good question too. So first of all, I encourage you to watch the third video that will walk you through how to fill out the preference form. We go into some detail on this same question there. But I'll stress it again that you don't want to put anything on your preference form that you would not be happy with. So all the places on your preference form would be included or could be considered as part of placement. We prioritize very interested. We measure our success on how many people we are able to place in their very interested choice, which is as high as we can possibly do. And, we've worked very hard to do that. There are some people who will be placed in their interested choice, and that's really just a matter of volume. So every program has 24 spaces typically, and we are able to place as many people as we can, but space is limited, which is why we ask you for multiple options, and which is why you need to be certain that you're happy with your very interested and your interested choices. So I don't recommend putting a safety. I don't recommend putting a place that you really wouldn't be happy with, because it is possible that you could be placed in any of those places. The other thing I'll mention is that you may want to consider, and we have some guidance on this as well, you may want to consider how many of the places on your preference form are the same exact places that your roommate, your teammate, your best friend, your boyfriend are also putting as their top choices. Because in that same way, there's 24 spaces, space is limited, and if everybody is putting the same places, then your chances of being placed there just go down. And you can probably do the math on the probability better than I can. But if you are considering options that maybe not as many people are considering, then there would be a higher likelihood that you would be placed there. But if you'd be happy with that placement, then certainly, that would be a place to put down. So we give you a list of places that have been highly rated in the past. And it's not to say don't rate these places, but it's just to give you some guidance on, if you rated only those highly rated places, there could be a scenario where we're not able to place you if we're not able to get you into one of those centers.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you recommend listing more than 6 sites? Would putting more sites in very interested be beneficial?
Good question. So I would recommend putting as many as you're interested in. And I feel like that's a really diplomatic response, but it's true that you can put more than 6 as long as you're happy with all of those places. So it would increase your likelihood certainly to put more places in very interested. I would certainly encourage that if you're happy with the places that you're putting there. It leaves a little more up to chance. And if you're happy with 5 or 6 or more in that category of very interested, certainly it leaves a little more chance because you just don't know of those 5 or 6 which one you might get. But it gives us more flexibility, and like I said, we measure the success of the placement process by how many people were placed in their very interested or one of their top 2 categories. So the more people that are very interested, the better. I forgot the second half of that question. There was another part I wanted to mention. Let me see. Oh, I answered it. Okay.
I think that's all the questions we have from participants right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give one more minute in case anybody types anything last minute. Remember that we have our drop-in hours starting next Tuesday. Go back to those links that we provided you. If anybody from the staff that's on the call could put at least the plus off-campus IQP link in the chat, that's probably where to start. And then we have one more question that I'm happy to take, which I'll read out loud, Deb. Can you elaborate on what happens when you cannot place a student in a site that they list, especially when they list mostly popular sites or highly rated sites? Do you reach out to the student about other options? So great question. Let's say that you included only highly rated sites on your preference form. You're giving us 6 places, so there is still a chance for placement. I don't want you to feel, there are some really exciting places to consider in the world. And of course, there's going to be some consensus on where people are interested in going, and that's okay. I don't want you to feel like you can't rate a highly, a site that you're interested in and a lot of other people are interested in too. It is possible that if you only include those, that we won't be able to place you. And the reason that might be possible is a lot of those, keeping in mind that we're looking at your whole application, the quality and content of that application, and the elements of the application that each director is interested in. So we're really placing people based on where they match best, based on the elements that the director is most interested in. There might be some directors that do value language experience, other directors that are looking more closely at writing, maybe GPA. So it's about what is the best fit based on your preferences and what the directors have indicated as well. So there could be a chance that based on those highly rated centers, we're not able to place you. You just did not fit as one of the best matches for any of those places. At that point, we would, at the end of this cycle, which ends on December 21st, we would notify you that we were not able to place you. We don't like to do that. We strive as much as possible not to, but especially in a large application process like this, there are occasions where we're not able to place someone. And what we would encourage you to do at that point is get in touch with us about our supplemental application processes, or also consider an on-campus IQP. So like I said, supplemental processes open 4 times a year. After each of our cancellation deadlines for each term, we open up any space that we still have available, and there will be another chance to apply. But if you're still grappling with how to fill out the preference form, come to a drop-in hour and we can kind of talk you through a little bit more of the specifics. But basically that's what would happen is we would not be able to give you a placement now, but that doesn't mean you're out forever. We would just have to work with you a little on next steps.
We have one more question.
Sure.
Does your major affect which locations you're eligible to apply to for IQP?
So that's a great question. And the answer is no. Your major, the IQP is an interdisciplinary project. So your major is taken into account after placement when directors are looking at how to put teams together. Sometimes directors have some interest in certain majors for certain projects. Let's say a project has a robotics focus. They might, after placement, they might approach some of the robotics majors in the cohort or make some decisions about projects, but not during the placement process. The whole point of the IQP is to have a well-rounded group of people from different majors. Okay. Well,
one more.
That's fine. I'm happy.
I was wondering when someone was going to ask a scholarship question.
Okay.
How does the scholarship factor into the prices? Is this number not included on the e-project price breakdown?
Thank you for this question. So if you are a class of 2024 student, which most of you are, who are applying this year, you have up to $5,000 for a scholarship towards an off-campus program. So the way that works is based on the program fee and based on the total cost of the program, you'll have up to $5,000. Some of the more costly project centers, I think of Switzerland or New Zealand, or some of the project centers where there is a higher cost involved. Those centers, you're going to see a $5,000 flat scholarship, and then there may be a balance between there, or there may be a portion that you would pay for. Other centers, the scholarship could cover the entire cost of the program. So that's where the up to comes into play, you will see some centers where the scholarship will cover the whole cost. So what we're hoping to do before the global fair, you won't see this yet on e-projects, but before the global fair, we're going to work with the financial aid office to see if we can get those calculated amounts onto e-projects. If we don't do it on e-projects, we'll have a handout at the fair. But this is, that will show you the whole picture of what the program would essentially cost when it comes to the program fee and then the out-of-pocket costs. But hopefully that answers your question.
We have some additional scholarship.
That's fine.
Yep.
You open the gates.
Since you get $5,000 towards IQP, what happens if the IQP is less than $5,000? Does the extra money go towards travel and food, or do we miss out?
So you have up to $5,000. So if your program, like I said, some programs, the scholarship will cover the whole cost of the program. The billable fees, which are the program fee, that's the anything that WPI provides on site, housing, sometimes excursions or language classes, those are built into the program fee. And then there's also the non-billable fees, which are things like airfare, food and incidentals, transportation, like maybe a bus pass or something like that. So that whole cost, the billable and the non-billable fees are taken into account, and then you would receive the scholarship for that. So in some cases, you'll have a balance that is over that, but if your program doesn't cost if your program is covered by the scholarship, then there's no balance. So it's just up to $5,000.
Thank you. A couple more scholarship questions. I heard the scholarship is now only for billable costs, or is it still both billable and non-billable? Yeah,
so it's billable and non-billable. And I'm glad that you're asking these questions here, because I think the best way for us to explain it is probably to put it on e-projects where you can see exactly what the scholarship, how the scholarship would impact the total cost. So it's assessed based on the billable and non-billable costs, and then for up to $5,000. So we'll make sure that's clear by the global fair.
Is there an application for the scholarship, or are we considered through the IQP application?
So as long as you're class of, 22 and higher, you have the scholarship available to you. Class of 24 students have up to $5,000. If you're not class of 24, or if you have a question of whether you're eligible, contact our office just to confirm.
Thank you. Do we still pay for WPI tuition for the term we are doing IQP?
So yes. So, I like to think of the IQP as a 2-term project, even if you're doing the 1-term off campus, because you start with your ID 2050 and PQP. ID 2050 is a social science research methods course, which is in the term before you go away. So sometimes that falls in one clean semester. Let's say that you're going away in B term, you would have your ID 2050 in A term. If you're going away in C, you would have ID 2050 in B, so it kind of spans 2 semesters. Regardless of that, the IQP is worth 3 credits, or 9 total credit hours. So it is part of your billable costs for the semester. So you pay tuition for the semester, and then you would have your program fee and your scholarship on for the semester that you're traveling. So if you are traveling in B term, you would see tuition for this fall semester, and then you would see your program fee and your scholarship for your project center. I'm glad we talked about those things. Thank you. We still have a little time, so I'll chat for a second and remind everybody about the links that we've already put out there in case you're looking for more information, and also our drop-in hours that start next Tuesday.
Erin, there's another one that just popped up. It says, so you also need to pay tuition if you want to go A term.
Yes, and maybe this person meant E, so I'll talk about both. So you do need to pay tuition if you go in A term. That would be part of your fall bill. So you would have ID 2050 in D term, and then you would travel in A term. So you'd be gone for the first term of that academic year, and that would be part of your fall bill. I'll just mention E term as well for the summer, because we do have summer offerings for off-campus IQP, and you can do that as well. So for E term, you would take your ID 2050 in D, and then you would travel over the summer. And for E term, you pay summer tuition, which is typically reduced. So it does give an option to consider if you're trying to fit a lot into your schedule. So you would pay summer tuition plus the cost of your program, whatever that program fee was, and then you would still receive your scholarship that would go towards the cost of the program. So like I said, E-term can be attractive for some people because it allows you to take care of IQP during the summer and frees up some space during the academic year if you're trying to fit in other things.
Okay, one more. Since we are registering for spring term classes this fall, would ID 2050 be added to our D term schedule if we find out we are placed in an E or A term IQP for the next year?
Yeah, these are great questions. I'm glad that you guys are thinking about this. So you could still make your schedule, and then you'll receive your placement in this December 21st. And then when you get back in C term, you can, or whenever you need to readjust your spring schedule, you'll still have time to drop a course in D term and add ID 2050. So, make your schedule, and maybe if you really are committed to an E or an A term site, just keep in mind that you may need to drop a course to fit in ID 2050. But you don't need to do that until you know where you're going, until you've committed to that place. But there's time to do it. I'll take the opportunity to say that when you're planning your schedule, ID 2050 is not an extra. ID 2050 is a full 1/3 course. It is writing intensive, and there's a lot of out of class meeting time. So we do not recommend overloading during that term. So, in that scenario, I would not recommend just adding ID 2050 and taking 3 other classes. You want to think about taking 2 classes plus ID 2050. And then you'll also have the PQP, which is the project specific information and kind of a placeholder for your meetings with your advisor and your teammates. So just think about that in class scheduling, and our videos go into a little bit more detail about scheduling and how everything fits in. We have a nice little map that shows it all.
I think that covers it.
Okay. Well, thank you all again. Very great questions. You can go back and watch this video if you want to listen in again or have any other things to go back to. Visit our website, and we hope to see you up in the project center.